back. This is Georgia Peachcast, coming to you from Cherokee County, Georgia. This is Pat.
And I'm Greg.
And I'm Martha Jean Schindler.
And we have Martha Jean Schindler as our guest tonight. She's chairwoman of Indivisible Woodstock CAN, C-A-N.
All right. So Martha Jean Schindler, this is the first time I've met you, and it's definitely probably going to be the first time for a lot of our listeners to know you. So can you tell us a little about yourself and how you came into this line of work?
Sure. So I am married and have a couple of cats and live here in Woodstock. So that's why I'm here in Woodstock. I moved in with my husband. And I started Indivisible Woodstock CAN because I saw an opportunity and a gap in what currently existed in Woodstock. Just after the 2024 election, it finally hit me that I was in a very, very red county. I had moved to Atlanta to go to someplace more diverse and vibrant and liberal than where I lived in Alabama, right? Yes, very funny. Then I met my husband, and we were long distance for a little while, with me living down more in central Atlanta and him living up here. And then I got married, moved in with him. And really the day that it hit me how different this was when I was filling out my ballot in November 2024, and there were so many seats that were just running unopposed that were only Republican, and I just was shocked, because to me that's not even a democracy. If nobody is challenging anyone's ideas, then you're eliminating choice.
Of course.
And so I don't sit still very well if there's a problem. I tend to want to do what I can to fix things, and not try to rely on other people to do it. So I wanted a group of people that I could talk to about these things. Really, right. It was kind of self-serving, honestly, because I was just like, I have to find other people who care about politics in the same way that I care about. A lot of my more politically oriented friends either didn't live near me or had moved away.
Right.
So, and the reality is most people in general really want to be able to ignore all of politics if given a chance. So that's totally understandable. I get it, but that's also why I decided that I wanted to start an organization, and that's why Indivisible Woodstock CAN showed up. Sorry, I just clicked on your podcast.
Oh, no, that's okay.
So
we bang on the table all the time.
What were your first few steps you took to build the group, and what didn't you?
Yeah, so where I started was I just need people to get together in a room, people who are like-minded, and talk about things. And again, I had lived in Woodstock for about a year before I did this, but I still didn't feel like I was very plugged in to the city at all.
Yeah.
I think part of it is being an adult in your 30s. That's where I am. Trying to make other adult friends. If you don't have children, it's already hard. If you have children, at least you have some built-in social things. So I found a group of on meetup.com that was called Resist Woodstock, and it was defunct, which meant that there was no current leader of the group. So I thought about reactivating the group, but I didn't love the meetup platform. So I just ended up messaging everyone that I could who was in that meetup group. They were clearly progressive, liberal, anti-Trump people.
Right.
In the area. I messaged all of them and I was like, hey, I'm looking to start a group similar, with similar goals to this one, just not on Meetup. Would you be interested in talking? 2 people responded to me.
That's all?
2.
How many people did you message?
About 40.
Wow. Only 2 out of 40.
But I work in marketing, and one of the things, I might mention this again, if you work in marketing or advertising or anything where you're trying to persuade people, you know how hard it is to persuade people. And I think sometimes people get too discouraged too quickly. It is very hard to drag people out of the comfort of their pajamas and their Netflix into the big world where they can be judged. Yeah. Like, it's just always
they're in their cocoon.
So I'm always excited about having even just 2 people. That's two more than zero,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So we met in a coffee shop, and this was in November, I think, still November or December. We just met in a coffee shop and talked about how none of us were plugged in to the current political environment. It's not like we're political insiders or anything. We were all just normal people who cared. And so we didn't know what to do, how to help. And it needed to work for us,
Right.
And so that's how we got started. One of the things that we decided that we wanted to focus on was, okay, we don't know what to do. We can have a book club, and then we can talk about ideas. And so that was kind of focusing on connection and on ideas and sharing our thoughts and being human together. I came up with the name Woodstock Can, which stands for Community Action Network, partly because there is the domain name was available, and so
Right.
were all the
Yeah.
handles on social media. But also I like the wordplay. Woodstock Can,
Yeah.
we can, and Indivisible now, since we're an Indivisible chapter, Indivisible Woodstock Can.
Yeah.
So you can do some fun things with it.
I agree. I think that's great.
How
So
do you-
you said, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go to number
So
three.
you said you seem like you've been really busy since November ish,
Mhm.
because we're talking about November 24, right?
Yes.
So and how many people are in your group now?
Right now, if we're using the email list as a barometer for membership, which I think is probably the best way, we have about 1,500 people.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And depending on, we've been growing, we've been trying to add more of an infrastructure to allow people to take on leadership positions if they want
Right.
to. Leadership wise, I mean, we probably have at least 20 people who are pretty committed to,
Okay.
which I think is a great number.
Right.
Again, to me, a lot of it is more the quality over the quantity, and I'd rather have 5 really great, passionate people who are working hard than 50 people who are like meh.
Yeah.
But we love the meh
Give you
people.
an hour to.
Yeah, we love the mad people too. Like
Yeah.
that, you need people like somebody
But you
else
need
pointed out.
passion.
Yeah, you do. And also, if you have, you can't have all generals and no soldiers. Somebody
That's right.
told me,
Yeah.
and that's very true. And going back to how we started, I would rather be doing almost anything other than this.
Right.
To be honest, like
Well, I think-
I enjoy aspects of it,
Yeah.
but I wish I could just sit on the beach with a cocktail in my hand all day and not have to worry about the fall of democracy. That would be great.
Yeah.
And that's and we try to understand, like we try to make it clear that that's how most people are. So we are like a very normal, average group of people who mostly are not average in a bad way,
Right.
but mostly we're not plugged in. We're not political insiders. We're just all trying.
Well,
and so that's nice.
So that brings up a good point, because we're not used to, as we were growing up and living in our society, politics was never on the front burner like it is now.
No.
Yeah.
And so that kind of begs the question, given the rapid growth of your involvement, how do you and your people kind of pace yourselves? How do you avoid getting burned out?
How do we avoid burnout? Yeah, I hear that discussion a lot. Well, I think the biggest thing is for me. So I have to I've always had to be aware that other people don't have the energy I have. And that's just, I am ADHD, I'm attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and I really have a lot of energy, and I always have a lot of hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
So we just sort of I'd sort of put other hobbies on a back burner, and now one of my major hobbies is Indivisible Woodstock Can.
Okay.
So, that means I get a lot of energy from it and I enjoy it. However, I have to know when to turn it off.
Right.
So, for example, my husband insisted, and I think it was good that he did this. He was like, you have to not do politics after a certain time of night. No more politics.
Yeah.
Unless there's something, that is really important. And it's so that I can, turn that off and actually enjoy quality time with him.
Right. So how many times have you rewatched Friends then?
Oh, I've never watched Friends.
So you're missing
no, I never.
That's
I wasn't a
generational
Friends
reference for
person.
me, but-
No, I know. And everybody I know.
Well, I figured
watched
that's a great
it.
way to turn off politics.
Oh yeah. Well, we do watch a lot of Arrested Development. So,
See, I haven't watched that one.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. But yeah, we watch shows, we check out. So I think also trying to, figuring out what the priorities are and being okay if you don't hit all of them. There's not a day goes by that I feel like I hit everything that I wanted to do.
Right.
And there will be some things that are hanging over me, and I'm like, God, I really wanted to do that 2 weeks ago.
You just described my daily honey-do list.
yeah. But and I could drive myself insane and run myself ragged and try to do everything. But that's actually part of how we founded the structure of the organization is designed. We try to point out like nobody can do everything.
Oh no.
That's why we need a lot of hands.
Right.
That's why we are okay with being big as long as we can be non-chaotic and big.
Right.
Because it's really about everybody has different interests. I don't like going to town halls. I don't it's not my favorite way to spend time. I like going to protests. I like going to postcard parties.
Right.
Maybe I could feel pressure to go attend everything, but we have some people who are introverts and they don't want to go out to any of these public things, but they would be great at calling postcard parties, doing stuff online. There are all kinds of different things. And so we try very hard to create an environment where anyone can show up and do something.
Right.
That's where we want to help. How can we help?
Yeah, there's a niche for each person.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the things that I was telling Pat about before y'all came in was it is a balance. It's hard to figure out how much do people want to be led, how much do people want to have freedom, and that's something that we're just constantly learning and trying to figure out as we grow and get a lot of input from the people who are actually in the group about what's working and what isn't.
Okay.
How do you decide which subjects or things that you want to focus on at any given point in time? I know there's so much out there that you can, as we've talked about.
There's a lot of spaghetti on the wall.
Yes, a lot of spaghetti on the wall. A lot of content to pick which ones you want. How have you been deciding which ones to zero in on?
Yeah, it's huge. There are so many things, and there are times that we see something and we want to spend more time on that, and then something else happens, right? And I think that's just the case all over the country. So our guiding principles, we are an indivisible chapter. So we are, nonpartisan and progressive, and we fight for democracy. That's a given. We say we fight for democracy and against authoritarianism, for the Constitution and against tyranny, for freedom and against Christian nationalism. So we have these guiding lights about what we think are the most critical things to fight against and to fight for.
Right.
So we also focus very much on Woodstock and Cherokee County.
Okay.
We we'll support efforts of our neighbors. Like some of our members volunteered to canvass for a candidate in Cobb County. And we thought that was great. It's not like we made them show up for it. They wanted to of their own volition, but we encouraged it because these are our neighbors and this is an important race, So we'll cast a wider net if it seems to matter, but we focus very much on what's happening here.
Right.
So that means we are having to look at national things because that affects Woodstock.
Oh yeah.
And I've shown up at city council meetings several times, enough that they probably think I'm insane, and to try to talk to them about we need in Woodstock to have protections against a lot of the things that are coming down the
pipeline.
Yeah, down the pipeline from, and I don't hear a lot of positive returns on that time I spend talking to the city council. But
the city council is populated by some people that may be a little bit more sympathetic to the current regime.
Yes, unfortunately,
someone
that's
who's coming
case.
back at them and saying, "Look, this is slippery slope. We have to fight against what they are trying to get us to do." So that's
why we know that there are efforts within the other group that we need to get a balanced number of individuals in position, even at the local levels, and even at Woodstock.
Yeah.
Woodstock.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's how did it come to be this way? Which is
And it's
the opposition
decades.
started at the local level 40
Yes,
years ago
yeah, decades of
and
it.
moved their way up the ladder and dominated in that respect, which is why your ballot looks like it does.
Right,
There used to be a lot more Democrats on
right.
the ballot here in Cherokee County,
Yeah.
and that's kind of missing now.
Okay.
So this doesn't sound like a typical political organization that we're used to seeing the last 20 years or so. So, in terms of your messaging and your style and what you're
Yeah.
trying to get people to do, not just the people in your organization, but the people you're messaging to, how are you
Yeah.
getting them to try to understand who you are and where you're coming from?
Yeah, so we are an Indivisible chapter. So the Indivisible is grassroots. So every chapter is a little different. Every
Okay.
chapter will have different personalities. But a lot of the foundational beliefs and emphases will be the same. What I think sets us apart are a few things. One, we are created by political outsiders for political outsiders.
Okay.
We are not entrenched in any systems that already exist or internal politics that already exist.
Okay.
And I am on the autism spectrum. And so I say that because I think it does matter in my personality and approach to things.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely do not care about ego-driven stuff. I don't care about my, things, a lot of things that other people do who are engaged in activities like this. I can't, that part of my brain that worries about what people are saying about me behind my back doesn't turn on bright red the same
Right.
way. So that gives me personally an element of fearlessness, which is sometimes a drawback, and sometimes it can be a very powerful tool.
Well, it limits distraction away from what you're trying to work.
Correct. So I care more about fighting for this cause than I care about fighting for an entrenched organization or a political party or anything. To me, it's more about the values and the ideas. So I think that sets us apart a little bit. I also think that the fact that and I'm not the originator of this. I forgot where I got this idea, but there is a group that watches fascism, and they have some guidelines about how to talk about it. And one of the things they said was name the villain.
Yep.
Because so much, and this again is probably my autistic brain. I don't like talking out of both sides of your mouth. I don't like having to, intuit and use weird cultural clues to figure out what you're saying. That stresses me out. It confuses me. And I use plain language. Sometimes I'll use big words because I like to read. I don't know. Like maybe I could tone it down.
Well, you're educated, so that helps.
Well, I like words, but the point is, like, these are not complicated ideas, and I think a lot of people benefit from making things complicated.
Oh yeah, they definitely
making it hard
Absolutely.
for the average person to have any entry into the arena. And so what I have tried really hard to do is focus on the core of what's really happening, and also we focus on truly universal values.
Right.
We say Indivisible Woodstock can. Yes, we are a nonpartisan progressive organization. Nonpartisan means we do not necessarily toe the Democratic Party line because of where the Republicans are these days. I would be hard-pressed to find a Republican we would support, but you find me one that has our values, and we would support it. Yeah. We're nonpartisan. I follow the Democratic Socialists of America. I follow the Working Families Party. I see what they're doing. And if there were candidates here, we might put effort towards encouraging people to go support those parties if they existed here in any, again, we don't tell people what to do. We just say, here's an opportunity to go serve your country in this way. Would you like to do it? And can we help you somehow?
And there are, and back to your point, okay, I'm just thinking about that. There are, the real Republicans would probably have a number of issues and values that you could easily share to.
Yes.
The problem is that those Republicans aren't running around right now. They're hiding.
Exactly. They've been hijacked. So the Republican Party has been hijacked by the, I've seen it termed the Nerd Reich. These are the anti-democratic billionaires who work in technology,
Right.
following Peter Thiel, and then hijacked by Christian nationalism, which is not Christianity. And we call that out by name. That's bold. But we say, if you are a Christian who is not a Christian nationalist, take your cross back. It's been used as a political bludgeon to hurt people.
Oh yeah.
And that's not reflective of your religion. And it's also, obviously there are, Trump has his own selfish reasons for wanting to do things, but then you have foreign interests.
Mhm.
So, you have three main things, and they just happen to see Trump as the convenient pawn to do whatever they want with, is our
Yeah.
perspective. That's not like most Americans care about freedom. Most Americans care about supporting the military. Most Americans care about the Constitution. Most Americans want to pledge allegiance to the flag and not pledge allegiance to Donald Trump.
Yes.
We pledge allegiance to ideas, unifying ideas and values, not individual people of power.
Right.
And so we talk about that very openly. We try to focus as much as possible on the universal things that I firmly believe unite all of us, regardless of what side you're on.
Right.
So-
No, and I think that's very, very true. And I think you're right. I think you find, when you state it that way, you find that the majority of Americans would agree with all of that.
Yeah.
That this is about our core principles.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that we grew up with, my parents grew up with, my great great grandfather grew up with. So, I can completely agree with that. And to be honest, I actually think of myself as more of a left leaning independent,
Mm-hmm.
not, a full blown Democrat. And all of the things that you said are things that I grew up with and things that I still believe very strongly.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that on the political spectrum, you're going to find all the way across. If people are going to be truly honest with them, the majority of people that live in America.
Yeah.
And it's
yeah.
certainly true for people that are coming from autocratic states that are
Yeah.
trying to escape it. That's the reason they come here, is because of those core values. So,
Yeah. The others, one of my, and the subject I always constantly bring up is the last election. 78 million people in America did not vote. So how many of those people are really carry the values that you're talking about? So many of them really want to be on that side. They had the ones that did get out and vote for Trump just got hijacked. You got hijacked for a long time. They've been being worked on for so long,
right.
but there's 78 million people out there that did not vote and did not find a reason to. Okay, they have different reasons why they didn't, but many of those have got to believe the same values that you're talking about, that the three of us, at least sitting around this table right now, and many more,
Right.
value as part of our lives.
I agree.
You know?
I do think that part of what we're fighting is the fact that there's a generation of people who have grown up with that American dream either watered down due to actual reality or as part of a propaganda campaign. There have been propaganda campaigns designed to make us hate America, designed to make us divided.
Yes.
And it's so if you ask a 20-year-old who was 10 years old when Donald Trump was first elected, maybe, or first announced he was running, the America that they've seen, the political America, is so different.
Oh, the one they grew up in, yeah.
The one that they grew up in, even different from mine. I'm 39. I'm an elder millennial is what they're called. But, I remember when the Twin Towers fell. And then we had this,
Right.
Giant spike of patriotism in our
Yes.
society, which had its pros and cons.
Yes.
But, we have so many people who don't even know what the American dream, and I'm using American dream loosely, or it never served them. There are marginalized groups in the country that also, arguably, that American dream was never real for them.
Exactly.
Unless they were in certain geographical pockets. So to a certain extent, too, we're appealing to the values that you have, but we're also saying this isn't just about going back to the America we had, Trump would not have succeeded in a healthy America that is what we want.
No, he wouldn't have.
He would not
Yeah.
have. We have to do better, and we
Yeah.
have to do differently.
Right.
And I don't have all the answers at all, but I believe that if we get enough people together who believe that it can be better, that we can do better, and we talk and exchange
Yeah.
ideas, we can, make incremental progress towards
Well,
that.
America has always been a generational project.
Yeah.
It has never been just one generation owns everything
Yeah.
that has made our country great. It's a generational project, and it's never ending.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the America I grew up in was exactly like you're talking about. It is that we work together to move the ball forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in some decades, we only move it a few inches. Some decades, we move it to 20, 30 yards.
Yeah.
That's an Obama reference.
Really?
I can't claim that one. But it
Yeah.
is so true. This is how he described how they got Obamacare through Congress.
Mhm.
They did not get everything they wanted. They wanted universal health care. But his point was, if we can get something and get the ball rolling in that direction, and then we can incrementally just keep doing that.
Yeah.
And
It's
so,
back to the
Yeah.
days when you had people that would realize that exact point,
Mhm.
that in order to accomplish something in general, you have to compromise with what somebody else feels is important to them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And if it's important to them and whatever you have is important to you, somewhere in the middle is makes sense, especially when you get to the point of governing. When you're governing, there's no way that you're going to have, unfortunately, we are in a position right now where it looks like it's the other way, but actual governing and governance is a combination of ideas from all sides put together and then producing the results that
Right.
run a country or a state or a county. It doesn't matter.
True.
So
Well,
And you were kind of moving in this direction, and that kind of leads us to our next question is, if there is action that can be done, after, meeting with your people and deciding, okay, here's where we are. This is what's going on right now. For somebody who's new to listening and who's new to organizing, like there's a lot of people that it's everything they can do because life is so hard
yeah.
to just wake up, go to work, after feeding your kids and all that and getting them off to school and then working 2-3 jobs a day and getting your kids fed and to bed, hopefully getting their homework done, that's all they can do.
Yeah.
So what's one small step that even people that are that busy can do or be involved in some small way that they could take home this week.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I kind of want to touch on something before, like this is going to be a long answer. I'm sorry. I tend to ramble sometimes.
Oh, no, yeah.
But so Pat kind of touched on how we did things in the past versus now. And that made me think, I don't remember exactly what you said, but it reminded me of a thought I had. I was talking to my grandmother about something, about a group I was in. And she started giving me all this really great advice about how to decide things as a group. It was honestly for a graduate school project, and I was just complaining. I was like, "Oh God, I thought school projects would be better by the time I got to grad school. Like this sucks." And my grandmother was telling me all these things, and she was like, "Well, don't y'all have a chairperson?" And I was like, "No, ma'am." And she was like, "Well, y'all need a chair. How are you supposed to decide anything?" And she told me, "You need this system. You need to do this in your group." And I just was like, "Oh my God!" Like, so I read Bowling Alone when I was in college. I took a class on it, and it talked about, it's a famous book. I strongly recommend it. It talked about how lonely Americans are and increasingly disengaged in civic life. Civic life being everything from like how their city is run to just meeting their neighbors.
Right.
And my grandmother had all this, like, she lives out in the country and she's relatively active. She's in her 90s. But I mean, she's not a famous politician, but she knew how to manage groups of people because she had spent her entire life being involved in various civic organizations. And there is a way to engage in these kinds of groups and nonprofits that is different from engaging in anything else. Just like,
Right.
playing video games with a group of people online is very different from playing by yourself,
Right.
and there are social
Yeah.
rules. And so if it's not a cultural norm to come and do all these things together, it is very scary.
Yeah.
So some of the best things that I think you can do is admit that it's scary, admit that you don't have enough time, and then focus on building a relationship with someone that you
Right.
can talk to about it.
Right.
And I firmly believe that relationship and human connection and being in person, if at all possible, is incredibly important. Not everybody can be in person.
Right.
Not everybody has that. If you can't find that in person, find it online, but avoid doom scrolling.
Yeah.
It will just continue to demoralize
Yeah, the
you.
algorithm is your enemy.
Yes, I mean, there are all kinds of terrible things happening every single day. Yes, there are also all kinds of really good things, even as bad as things are right now.
And you bring up a good point, because the only way you really find out about the good things, I think, is by being personal with people.
Yeah.
Because they're going to start sharing their good stories. That'll
Mhm.
feed you to share your good stories.
Yeah.
And you rarely get that in the news media. It's when you get in that small collective of
Yeah.
people that you really start making those connections and you start thinking positively. I
Yeah.
think that's a really good point.
And also,
I'm gonna wrap it up
even if you're talking about, bummer topics, you're talking to like somebody you trust
Mhm.
who's accepting of your ideas,
Right.
that's good for you. That's good. That's
Yeah.
still good for your brain. It's good for your heart and your soul and your mind and your
Mhm.
body. It's good for
Yeah.
everything. So I would say try to find somebody to talk to, and a good way to do that is to join an organization. And there are all kinds of really good ones. I'm a big fan of Indivisible. Again, every chapter is different. You can find a chapter of Indivisible by going to indivisible.org. A lot of times you can find groups on Facebook. Again, beware the doom scrolling and the Facebook drama, but there's some really good groups out there that you could find. And volunteering for something
Right.
is a really great idea. Now, somebody else gave me a tip that postcard parties, they called postcard parties the gateway drugs to activism. And here's why. Postcard parties are really easy to do. You can do them anytime. You could even like handwrite notes to your neighbors, and you don't even have to mail it, I guess, as long as that's legal. Like if you know them and you
you
want to
just
hand them.
go and put it on their door. I mean,
Yeah, you can go put it on their door, but it's fun.
Mhm.
It's you get to sit with people. You could have a postcard party for anything. How do you find the addresses? You can actually buy voters' addresses
Right.
online. Any of us can go on and do that. It's not the cheapest thing in the whole world, but you can get a list of, I think, all the voters in the state of Georgia for $300 and something,
That's
something like that.
if-
I don't remember.
if you're working with a group, that's really not that much.
But I'm saying you don't have to even do that. Like
Right.
you could focus on your
You
community.
just walk door to
and
door, yeah.
yeah, and you don't even have to talk to them. Just put that little note, and it can be, I care about my community, and I hope you do too, or whatever
Right.
is important to you and on your heart.
Right.
So that leads me to the final question. Final question is, so what gives you personally hope in this day and age?
So I I have a funny answer to this. I think
Funny's good. We like funny.
well, not funny, haha, funny,
Oh.
weird, I guess. So, I don't know if I believe in hope as a concept. I believe in perseverance, because as long as you're on this planet, you can either give up and roll over and take what comes at you, or you can keep trying. And I apply that personally and, just to extended things.
Mhm.
Like, to me, the only choice is I give up. And I become the biggest MAGA head in the world and just take what's coming at me, or I keep doing what I think is right to make the world into what I want.
Right.
Now, so in that way, I'm a bit of a contrarian, because I don't think that's truly hope. I don't do things because I think it's going to work necessarily. I do try to have good strategies that I think are the least likely to fail.
Mhm.
But I don't go into things and say, I really think this is going to work and we're going to turn this all around and everything's going to be great and we're going to have a utopia on the other side. I don't think
Right.
that's it. It reminds me of the story of the starfisher washed up on the ocean on the beach, and a guy's throwing him back, but there's millions of starfish all washed up, and this guy's like, "You're not gonna toss, you're not gonna save them all."
Right.
And he's like, "Well, that I saved that one. He cares," as he's throwing him into the water.
Right.
I think life is like that. Now, what brings me the most joy and makes me feel the most fulfilled with doing this organization, which is hard and scary, and it's really difficult because I'm affecting people's lives,
Right.
even in tiny bits,
Right.
um, and that's to me a big deal, but it's the fact that so many people have told me that they have gotten hope from it.
Right.
That by attending a protest and seeing that there's so many more people here than they thought, or here these folks will stand out in the rain to protest, or I thought this was such a red county. Like, so many people in our group talk about how they can't tell their families what they're doing.
Right.
Because their families are all so MAGA that they would be ostracized.
Mm-hmm.
That's very lonely.
Yeah.
And now they have connections, they have people that they can talk to. And I think
and
that's one of the most important things.
When things get bad enough, some of those family members, they're gonna start
Mm-hmm.
going, okay, I was completely lied to, and
Yeah,
they
Martha,
could become part of the movement. I mean,
yeah, I'm
'cause
just thinking, Martha,
things do
what
get
you
that
just,
bad.
but really what you are, you're still within what you're looking for. You're hoping, and it is to me hope, that what you're doing is meaning something and you're accomplishing something.
Yes.
So it is hope.
I guess so. It's probably me just splitting hairs. I probably just process the word differently.
Well, you do have a good point. There's this thing out in the investment world called hopium.
Oh, hopium, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and
opium.
so you can't live forever on hopium, and it's a really bad investment strategy. But in the case of what we're talking about, the value of hope is very much how you described it, is that there's people that want to do something. They want to have an impact in a good way, and that instills hope in other people, and
Mm-hmm.
then they get involved. And I think that aspect of hope is really, really important.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just about, the law of entropy applies to the universe, and it applies to all our systems. We have to constantly work. You have to work to maintain relationships that are healthy. You have to work to maintain governments that are healthy, because the law of entropy just means that everything kind of wants to crumble and get destroyed, and you are constantly fighting against this. And
we want that to stop.
Yeah.
Trump.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
sorry.
But there's always going to be something.
It would be nice if it would stop it.
But that's why you can't give up. It can always get worse.
Yeah.
And if you roll over and give up because you're like, I'm not hopeful right now, you have really done yourself and everyone else a disservice, because there are always ways that you can help, no matter how bad it is.
And our country was founded on hope, the hope of the founding fathers.
Yeah.
And all the people that sacrificed
that it
to
could be
create
better
this
than
nation.
this.
So,
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing to bring
With
up.
that, I think we'll wrap it up.
Yep.
Martha, thank you for coming.
Yes, Martha.
We really appreciate it.
Yep.
And I think everybody now knows who you are and what's going on. I don't think there's going to be any doubt about that from this point on.
No, and we hope to have you again on the
I'd love to come back.
podcast.
I love talking too long and
All
too
right.
much.
And
Oh, no, that's fine. Don't worry about that.
do your wrap up and ask for,
Okay, well, if you enjoyed this podcast and you want to keep us smoking along, not that we smoke, I don't, and please hit the like and subscribe if you don't mind, and share it with your friends. And so, thank you very much. This has been,
and good night.
well, I was going to say Pat and Greg.
And Martha Jean.
Thank you very much for joining us.